Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Sudhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Sudhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yashodhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Braja Janara Yashodha Nandana Braja Janaranjana Braja Janara Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janamallava Girivaradari Gopi Janamallava Jai Gopi Janamallava Girivaradari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Sri Radha Madhava ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Gopevanande Hari Hari Om Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nevisesa Sanyavadi Paschati Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Tonight the topic is humility, and the natural question we have to answer is, why would anyone want to be humble? Because in the material sense, if you're humble, what happens? You get taken advantage of, right? People step on you, and people are looking for humble people to take advantage of, right? So, from the material sense, I would think being humble is a really bad idea. And if you want to get ahead, you have to be courageous and bold and forceful There's an interesting book. It was called "What Got You There Won't Keep You There." And this was written by a man who works in the corporate world, and he helps CEOs become better people. And he noticed that what got those CEOs to the top was all the wrong stuff. Stepping on people, their egos, their arrogance, their competitive nature got them to the top. And he realized from his experience that if they keep doing that, they're going to fall down to the bottom. That you have to actually maintain a high level, you have to develop good qualities. You can't, materially, it may make sense that if you're competitive and pushy, you get to the top. But once you're there and you do that with everyone, everyone hates you. There was another corporate guy who said something quite interesting. He said, for corporate leaders, humility is essential because humility allows you to listen to other people. Because if you're humble, you don't think you know everything, right? So wouldn't you like a boss who's humble? Wouldn't it be easier to work with a boss who's humble? Yeah. So, we might think humility is a weakness, but if you switch it around, you see that everyone would love to work with someone who's humble, because someone who's humble will listen. They'll be sympathetic. They'll be understanding generally, right? If we look at humility from the perspective of being free from arrogance or pride or ego, then we can see it's a great strength, at least individually for us, because to live without false pride, without trying to show off to impress other people, to be willing to give credit to others and not take it for myself, even when I may deserve it, but I want to share it, that requires great power. And a lot of people, one of the reasons they don't like other people's ideas is because they want their ideas to prevail and they want to get credit. So if your idea is better than mine, I may not like it, even though it's better, because then you'll get credit and you'll look better than me. And if I'm the boss, then that I don't feel good because you did better. And I'm actually trying to hold you down. So that's another aspect of how ego and pride gets in the way, and how humility enables us to work with other people, work well with other people. So it's such a great quality. And to be free from ego requires an amazing amount of strength, doesn't it? Like let's say, for example, we all worked together to put on a festival, and after the festival, we were giving out awards and recognition, and you were one of the main people in the festival, and we forgot to recognize you. How would you feel? Mad, yeah. Upset. Maybe some of you would feel a few stages beyond mad. Like, we might not ever see you again. You were so angry. There was a book called Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it was describing the history, you could say the history of the Hare Krishna movement 500 years ago. And the author, I forget who it was, I forget, there was a devotee, and the author wanted to write about him. And he said, you can write about me, but don't mention my name. So when you get to that level of spiritual advancement, then in this situation, when you weren't recognized, you would think, oh, that was really good. I'm really happy that I wasn't recognized. You actually don't want to be. Isn't that interesting? You just want to serve, you want to support, you don't want to be in the center, you don't want to be on top. You're happy to serve. And you would prefer to give recognition to others. Isn't that interesting? Rather than get it for yourself, your pleasure would be to give recognition to others. And just think what a fantastic leader you could be if you don't take credit, if you don't need to take credit for anything and you can give it to others. Like my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he was always giving credit to his disciples. He said that I couldn't spread this movement without your help. And we know it was the other way around. That we couldn't have done it without you, but he's saying, I couldn't have done it without you. So he didn't have a need to take credit, but he always recognized and appreciated anyone who helped. Now, one time, he said something quite interesting. He said, although I'm your spiritual master, I feel like you are my spiritual master. So what did he mean by that? He said, when I look at you and see how you serve me, then you're teaching me how I should serve my guru. So you're actually my teacher. Isn't that interesting? It requires a bit of humility to think that way, doesn't it? Especially, you're the guru of thousands of people, and they're acknowledging your greatness, but you say, I'm learning from you, because I watch how you serve me. I'm your spiritual master, but I watch how you serve me, so I'm learning from you. So you're actually my spiritual master. Interesting, isn't it? We were talking, I think it was 2 days ago, about Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna told Arjuna, fight, and Arjuna said, I don't think it's a good idea to fight. Let's be nonviolent. So nonviolence is, of course, a good qualification, a good quality. But Krishna said, this war has to be fought, because if it's not, the world will suffer. And so it's so interesting, because externally, Arjuna looked very humble because he didn't want to fight. And he said, I don't want to fight. Let the other side win. I'll just go to the forest. That's pretty humble, isn't it? Okay, we're fighting. Here, take everything. We're going to divorce court. Take it all. Just take everything. Take the house. Take the money, whatever. I'll live in the van. Just give me the old van. I'll live in it. That's like humble, isn't it? So Arjuna looked humble. I don't want to fight. I don't. And Krishna was telling him, fight and regain your kingdom. And he's saying, I won't. I don't need the kingdom. I don't need to win the battle. I don't need anything. So externally, he was very humble, but actually, he wasn't humble. Because another definition of humility is to follow the instructions of superiors, your guru or God himself. So if God says fight, and you say, I don't think it's a good idea to fight, you're being defiant. And even though you don't fight, you're being proud. Isn't that interesting? So sometimes humility is not what it appears. I'll give you another example. So Arjun's not fighting, and that's pride, and he's fighting, and it's humility. Because he's fighting because Krishna told him. And when he stopped fighting, Krishna said, get back out and fight. So by not getting back out and fighting, he's defying. He's defiant, and then therefore he's being proud. Does that make sense? Because a definition of humility means to do what God wants you to do. Now, my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, would sometimes say that if someone is harming another devotee, you should defend that devotee. If you can. I don't know if everybody could, but if you could physically defend, keep the people who are harming away, you should do that. And he said, you shouldn't think, oh, I should be humble now and not do anything. He said that would be wrong. So humility is not always what it seems externally. And as I was saying, people pushing you around, letting people push you around, it's not actually humility. Sometimes it might be if you're accepting of a situation. But sometimes that's not humility. So don't have that fear, if I'm humble, then I'll be a loser. So I'm deciding not to be humble. If we use this definition of humility to follow God's order, then it's perfect. Then we can understand that's power. Now there's another definition of humility, which is to recognize that your intelligence, your ability, your power, it all comes from God. and to not become proud of it. Because those are all gifts that he's giving us, aren't they? If you can cook, if you can sing, if you can write, if you can paint, whatever it is you do, where does it come from? Where is that ability coming from? It's coming from God because he's the source. Has to be. He's the source of everything. We're just reflecting his qualities, right? So, when you understand where the power is coming from, you don't become proud. You become grateful. And when you don't understand where the power is coming from, you become proud and not so grateful, or less grateful, or not grateful at all. You think, it's me, I worked hard, I achieved this. So, divine empowerment, when you understand how it works, that's a sign of humility. And when you are humble, then God will give you more power. And when you're proud, he'll take it away. So we use my spiritual master, Prabhupada, as an example. One second. He was very successful. He was actually the first person to ever live on this planet to bring what we're teaching outside of India. It never got outside of India, or if it did get outside of India, nothing happened. It only was spread to a few people. It didn't catch on. It was just a little fire that blew out very quickly. So he was the first person to get it out of India. Not only did he get it out of India, he got it on every continent of the world. That's quite a feat. In the history of the world, no one ever got those teachings outside of India. What to speak of getting people to follow it? No one ever did that before. And he never took credit for it. He never took credit. And people would tell him, what you've done is amazing. And he'd say, no, I haven't done anything. He said, what I did was I followed the order of my guru, and it was through his power and his divine arrangement that it happened. He never took credit. That's humility. And when you have that level of humility, that's when you can be used and empowered. You see, God will never give you anything that will be bad for you. And for some people, if they are successful, they become proud. And what happens when you become proud? What does the Bible say? Pride precedes a fall. Right? Yes? So, when a person can handle success, fame, wealth, followers, and think that I've done nothing, it's all the grace of God. God, Krishna, gives him more and more. And when he can't, he takes it away. He says, I gave it to you, you become proud, you think it's yours, he takes it away. Just like your father. Your father gives you money, you say, I want to start a business. So he says, okay, let's start with 10,000, let's see what you do with it. You take the 10,000 and the first thing you do is you buy a new car, which you didn't need for the business. He goes, okay, that's the last 10,000 you're going to get. You misused it. Or you spend the 10,000 and you invested that 10,000 with some financier and said, look, I got 10,000, this and that. Could you loan me 100,000? And the father goes, hey, that's good. You're smart. I'll give you another 10,000. Let's see how you use it. So that's how it works. When you can use the power for service, then you get more. And you misuse it, he takes it away. Yes, Krishna Lekha has a question.
Well, but we see often that a lot of people who are not humble have power.
Yes.
And even
It's material
for
power.
a long time.
It's material power, though. That's their karma, so they'll get it. But if they get it and they misuse it, that'll be taken away, at least in the next life. You know, the problem with good karma and power and wealth is you can misuse it, and then you end up on the opposite side in the next life. Like if you hoard wealth in this life, you'll be poor in the next life. So let's say you're very wealthy, and you use that wealth properly. In your next life, you'll be even more wealthy. But if you hoard it, like we saw today, we went to, where do we go? The Powers Court? So, you know, it's kind of a big place for one family. And the result of that one family living there is a lot of people didn't really have a place to live with the money they had to spend. So that will balance itself out. But what we're talking about is something spiritual, where it's not under karma, where it's a gift that Krishna is giving. And then he gives it to those who can use it. And the more humble a devotee is, meaning the more he doesn't identify with that power, the more Krishna gives. The more he identifies, the more Krishna takes it away. Because Krishna doesn't want us to misuse something. So if he sees we're misusing it and it's going to be bad for us, he'll take it away. So that's not under karma. That's directly. That's directly Krishna. That's directly God and you. Karma is different. It'll come. So you may get fame and power. It's in the stars. You deserve it. You've created it from your past life. But it's a great opportunity to create some really bad karma. Or really good karma. Because it's power. Right? Any kind of good karma can turn into bad karma. You can use it to create bad karma. Right? If you have $10 billion right now, you could do a lot of good, and you could live like a British lord, right? So there'll be a result of how you live. Now, there's another interesting thing about pride. God is a person, and he wants a relationship with all of us. But there's one thing he doesn't like. He doesn't like devotees who are proud. And you may say, well, that's not very nice. He should like everyone because he's God, and I thought God is the well-wisher of everyone and the friend of everyone, and he is the well-wisher of everyone, and he is the friend of everyone, and he doesn't like people who are proud. Still. Now, how can I say that? I will ask you a question. Do you like people who are proud? Do you like can you have a good relationship with someone who's proud? Do you have any friends that talk about one thing and one thing only, and it's about them? And if you try to talk about anything else, they'll cut you off and continue talking about themselves. Anyone know any people like that? Yeah. Is it fun to be around them? No. Do you know anybody who pretends to be someone they're not? They pretend to be better than they are, or smarter than they are, or more cultured, aristocratic, elevated, whatever it is. Do you know anybody like that? Are they fun to be around? No. What kind of people do we like? We like people who are honest. People who admit mistakes. It's so nice to be around people who can admit mistakes, isn't it? It's such a great quality. And people who are not pretending. We love people like that. So when we say God doesn't like people who are proud, we're made in the image of God, and we don't like it. And if we don't like it, the reason we don't like it is because he doesn't like it. We're reflections. None of us like that. Now, in our scriptures, many of you know, that there are many, many stories where a devotee of Krishna becomes proud and Krishna does something to remove their pride. Every time his devotee becomes proud, he does something to remove their pride. And the reason is because it disturbs the relationship. Krishna wants to have a relationship with all of us, but if the person's proud, it disturbs the relationship. So in order for him to have a good relationship, he has to remove the pride. And also, to help that person advance spiritually, he has to remove the pride. But specifically, he can't have a relationship with someone who's proud. He doesn't like it. And he's God, so he can do something about it. We may not be able to do something about it with the people we know, but he can do something. And he does something to remove the pride. And he does it all the time. And if you don't believe me, become proud and you'll see what's going to happen. He'll remove it somehow or other. Have you ever become really proud and then made a huge blunder in front of a lot of people? It's like, you can't hide it anymore. I think we've all been in situations like that. So Krishna arranges those situations. You ever have a secret that you don't want anybody to know because you're too embarrassed if they find out, and somehow or other it's found out? You ever have that experience? Who's arranging that? That's Krishna. Because he doesn't want us to be proud. Now, we have a problem when we come to spiritual life. I mean, I'm talking about real spiritual life, not materialistic religion, but real spiritual life. Because real spiritual life is based on one principle, that whatever we do to please God. That's the motive. That's the only motive. Any other motive is to be eliminated, right? Only one motive. This should please God. That's pure, right? Now, all of us have come here from the material world. We've all been in the material world quite a while. And our motives are not pure. Most people go to temples, churches, mosques, and what do they pray for? Do they pray for pure love? Most people pray for something other than pure love. Right? Something to benefit themselves materially. Good health, education, good job, money, find a nice partner, whatever. In bhakti, which means devotion, the principle is it's got to please Krishna. You do it. Whatever you do it, you're doing it to please God. So what's the problem? Problem is when we begin doing bhakti, we're used to lifetimes in the world of feeding our ego. So we're very motivated to do things to get some appreciation and recognition. You agree? Yeah. In fact, you remember Dale Carnegie, he wrote that book, How to Win Friends and Influence Neighbors, and he said the deepest human need is to be appreciated, to be recognized. So I'm not saying it's bad, but when that becomes the motive to serve Krishna, that I want to be recognized. Okay, so I'll use myself as a guinea pig. We're doing the experiment, I'm the guinea pig. So I've come here, I'm traveling around the world, Manu has invited me, and I thought, okay, I will come to Ireland, I will come to Dublin, and I'll speak. And my only motive is that I will speak so well that you all fall in love with me and think I'm the greatest thing that ever happened to Dublin. And you'll all, after every class I give, you'll all come up to me and you'll say, Mahatma, you're the greatest thing that ever happened to Dublin. And I'll very humbly say, oh, thank you, you're so kind. And inside I'll be saying, yes, I know I'm the greatest thing. And I knew that they would know that. And I'm so happy I came here to establish myself as the greatest thing. So my motive in coming here is not to help you at all. Everything I'm saying is solely to impress you. I read books on humility, I've studied it from all angles of vision. Now I'm going to come and impress you. That's my only motive. That would be weird, don't you think? At the same time, it wouldn't be so weird, because that's pretty normal in this world, isn't it? Whatever it is, musician, artist, writer, cook, whatever it is, we want to impress people and we want to get feedback that you're good, you're great, you're smart, you're talented. And when we get it, we say, oh, you don't have to say that. And we're loving it and eating it up. And we want more. That's the conditioning. And I'll tell you something quite interesting. This is there's a book called Brihad Naradiya Purana. That's one of the Vedic literatures, one of the what we call Puranas or histories. It describes a very interesting phenomenon. It describes the position of a sadhu or yogi. A sadhu means like a saint. And the sadhu renounces the world. He renounces everything, completely renounced. He's austere, eats little, sleeps little. He doesn't marry, doesn't have family, has very few possessions. He may travel every few days, doesn't have a fixed residence. He's completely detached. Said even that sadhu is proud because he thinks, just see how renounced I am. The ultimate paradox. He's renounced the world and he becomes proud of his renunciation. So that's how deep the need to be acknowledged goes. You've renounced everything, but you can't renounce your desire to be recognized for your renunciation. Which, of course, doesn't make sense, because if you're actually renounced, that would go with it. It gets worse. You thought that was bad, it gets worse. In the same Naradiya Purana, it says, when he finally comes to the point where he actually he's renounced even the desire to be honored, still he doesn't want it, but still if he gets it, he likes it. In other words, he's not seeking it, that's not his motive. He's not coming to Dublin to be recorded as the best speaker that's ever spoken in Dublin and get you all to write him letters of how great he is. Doesn't want it, but when he gets it, he relishes it. So that's the condition that we're all in. And it's a problem because bhakti is supposed to be purely motivated only by the desire to please Krishna or God. Right? Now I'm going to ask you a question. And it's not going to be easy to answer. But I would like you to think, just like you are sitting here in this room, right? And you will go to work tomorrow and you will interact with people. When you interact with people, when you come to a place like this, what do you want people to believe about you? What do you want people to think about you? In what ways are you trying to impress them? Do you want them to think you're smart? Do you want them to think you're talented? Do you want them to think you're cool, beautiful? What is it you want them to think? We all have something, or in some way we're trying to impress people, to get them to think something about us. So, he's such a nice guy. She's so intelligent, and he's so funny, and he's such a good businessman, and he's such a good manager. What do we want people to think about us? And then you start to notice the next question, which is even more depressing than the first question, is what do we do to get them to believe that? Like, how do we act? Do we go out of our way to be funny, or tell people how much money I made, or show people how smart I am, or go out of my way to be nice so everyone will tell me how nice I am? This is our condition, isn't it? And that gets in the way of pure spirituality. And and so humility, I'll give you the spiritual definition of humility. And I don't expect any of us to be able to live up to it at this point, and in our entire life we may not be able to come to this level, but we at least come closer than we are today. Listen to this definition, and I know it's going to shock you, and it may not even make sense to you when you first hear it. But the spiritual definition of humility is to think that everyone in this world is better than you. Now you're all thinking, if I think like that, that sounds like a severe case of low self-esteem, and I would be the most depressed person in the world. It's possible. It could be low self-esteem. But if you achieve it spiritually, it's not low self-esteem. You actually feel that way. Is that amazing? Isn't that amazing? How could you actually feel that way? That's humility. That's a very high level of humility. But you're looking at everyone and you're thinking, better than me. Not in the depressing way. Not in an envious way. Not in the way of like low self-esteem. I'm so bad, I'm so rotten. You don't feel suicidal, you don't feel depressed. It's hard to explain, and it's hard to relate to, isn't it? But that's a very elevated stage of spirituality. So for us, how could we translate that? Like what's achievable for us? What's achievable for us as a sign of our humility is that we appreciate others. And what the red flag is that we're not developing humility is we're critical of others. Because when you criticize, what are you doing? You're taking somebody who might be a little higher than you, and you're pulling them down a little bit, so now you're higher than them. That's the function of criticism, generally, unless you're trying to help somebody. That's generally the function of criticism. Well, I'll give you a graphic example. 100 years ago, you build a building in Dublin, and your building is the tallest building. Subsequently, other buildings come up around your building, and everyone wants to have the tallest building, so the next building's taller than yours, and the next building's taller than the second building, and the fourth building's taller than the third, and so forth, right? So now you're frustrated, you don't have the tallest building. So what do? Well, could add some more floors on your building, or you could just bomb the other buildings. And that way you'll have the tallest building again. That's what criticism is. You're just bombing people so you can feel like you're better than everyone. If I can just bomb you, destroy you, then I'll be the tallest, isn't it? Or if I'll chop off. There was a temple in India, and Muslims came and invaded it, and it was higher than their mosque, and they chopped off the top of the temple. So we do that. We chop people down because they make us feel bad, that they're better. Right? How spiritual is that on a scale of 1 to 10? I think it's -10. What do you think? Isn't it? So at least we should be aware that in general, when we're criticizing someone, we're trying to put ourselves above. That's called pride, right? Isn't it? Put yourself above someone. When the definition of humility is to think others are better, and then you're pulling someone down. It's not very spiritual. And we all do it, don't we? We have this inborn need to feel better than others. That's the ego raising its head. So, a sign that we're progressing spiritually, or as we said yesterday, even if we're not progressing, we should act, we should do the actions that will help us progress. The sign is that we appreciate. So I see you and I think, well, you're a nice devotee, you're a nice person, I see so many good qualities in you. You can't do that if you're not humble. It's really, have you ever noticed that? It's really hard to appreciate someone unless you have a little bit of humility. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed, Krishna Lekha?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, maybe I'll re-ask the question. Has anyone not noticed that? It requires some humility to appreciate another person. Genuinely appreciate. But even if you don't genuinely appreciate, if you try to appreciate, it will make you more humble.
What if it makes you jealous? I mean, you try to appreciate, because you see, but it kind of still produces...
Keep appreciating. Okay, I'll tell you what the problem could be. It's kind of a catch-22. You've heard that saying, catch-22? You heard the saying, damned if you do, damned if you don't?
Yeah.
Well, catch-22 is... There's a story behind it. It's an English expression which basically says, if you go left, you'll be shot, and if you go right, you'll be shot. It's so what's required is a shift in consciousness so that the appreciation can be more genuine. And one of the problems that people have is, if I ask you, for example, appreciate this person, if you have a bad relationship, and so I say you appreciate. And so the first thing you do is you'll try to think of something to appreciate. And in some cases you might say, I can't think of anything to appreciate. That does happen. Right? And so you're thinking, well, I could appreciate her earrings, they're pretty nice. So that's not what we want you to do. We don't want you to appreciate something extra. Well, she just colored her hair. It's a nice color. I could appreciate that. I like that. So that's what a lot of people look for. They'll look for something external. Okay, what is she good at? Well, I heard her do kirtan and she sings nicely. So yeah, she's a good singer. So I could appreciate that. That's very external, and it's not really what's meant by appreciation. It has to go deeper. Now, I'll give you an example. I don't know all of you that well, but what I do know is that right now you could be at some pub getting drunk and you're not. And you're actually sitting, listening to a spiritual talk, because you probably want to improve yourself. Yes? So it's very easy for me to appreciate all of you even though I don't know you, because I can appreciate there's some level of seriousness or sincerity towards spiritual advancement. And that's a very deep kind of appreciation, because it affects me deeply, much more deeply than, well, nice purse. Yeah, I appreciate Krishna Leka's purse. It doesn't resonate on the heart level. But the fact that you're here trying to progress spiritually, I can feel your sincerity, I can see it, I can appreciate that. That's real appreciation. It's deep, it's not false. So let's say you and I had some bad relationship, but still I see that you have a lot of sincerity in your spirituality, and I can appreciate that in spite of the other problems we've had. But it requires humility to see that. Like, I have to see and feel your sincerity, your dedication. And I think the key word is feel, because if we're trying to appreciate without feeling, it's not really genuine. It's very external. And so when I said damned if you do, damned if you don't, you have to come to that consciousness to properly appreciate. And then when you come to that consciousness and appreciate, you'll see a difference. But what we call the catch-22 is coming to that level in the first place. But at least if you find a different level upon which to appreciate, it's easier. Another level for which we can appreciate anyone is we just see, here's a spiritual being, they reflect all the divine qualities of God, they're part of God, and I could see that in anybody, and therefore I could appreciate anybody. Right? Even the person who's not appreciable, I can appreciate. Well, you're laying in the street drunk, but I can see you're a reflection of God. You just forgot Him. But potentially, you're this pure spiritual being that has all divine qualities. I could appreciate that. Even in a drunk. What do you think? Is it possible?
Yeah, I guess it's possible.
You can try. You understand what I'm saying? It
Yes,
has to be.
I understand.
It has to be deeper. And if you practice it, there's a point where you'll see you can appreciate so many people. Just like I'm saying, all of you could be somewhere else, but you're not. So that makes it very easy to appreciate all of you, right? You have some genuine sincerity spiritually, or some genuine desire to be elevated, to be a better person. So I appreciate that. It's obviously appreciable, but you have to be able to see it. And you have to be able to get beyond your own ego to see it. So it's like, it forces you to get beyond your own ego to see it, which is why appreciation is so good. And then the act of appreciation, if it's genuine, it uplifts you, it elevates you. So, at least what we can conclude from this is, if I have a tendency in general not to appreciate very much, that means there's pride there. And if I'm able to appreciate more, it means there's some humility there, and that's a good sign. So if it's not there, we should be a little concerned. And what can I do to bring it there? I don't appreciate people. I'm always critical. I always see faults in other people. That's a bad sign from the spiritual perspective, because it means it's generally a sign of pride at some level. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's something we can reflect. If you're in this space where you're always criticizing, you're always sarcastic, you're always looking down, making fun, there's some pride issues going on. We don't want to admit it. We just want to say, no, that person made a mistake, I'm just pointing it out. I'm not fault-finding. I didn't have to find any faults. The faults are right there. Anybody can see them. That's what we want to tell ourselves, right? I'm not a fault finder. You just have so many faults. They're staring me in the face. I don't have to find them. They're just all over the place. So I'm not a fault finder. But that's not true. Because you have so many good qualities that are staring me in the face also, and I'm not seeing them. I'm only seeing the faults. So I am a fault finder. And there's a reason I'm doing that. And it's stemming from pride. Now, there's another problem with pride. In advancing in spiritual life, and actually advancing and improving yourself in any way, mentally or emotionally, you have to be aware of your own shortcomings, because then you can work on yourself, right? Now, some of us have a really difficult time when someone says, you have this problem, and then I tell you what it is, and then you say, no, I don't, or shut up, or you have the problem also, and say, I didn't ask you to tell me what my problems are. Or something along those lines, right? That's not uncommon, is it? A sign of humility is that somebody could point out a fault, and you will think, God has sent this person to point out this fault to help me, and to also keep me humble. Because honestly, I didn't really think I have any faults, which is why I don't like someone telling me I have faults, because I'm pretty convinced I don't have any. And I'm pretty convinced I don't have the one he's telling me I have. And that is a very bad sign. Whereas humility means that I'm self-reflective, I'm introspective, I'm willing to look at my faults. That way I can improve myself. And I'm also willing to let other people tell me what's wrong and thank them. Thank you for pointing that out. That's good. I can work on that. Let's say I'm a doctor and I have special power. I can just look at your face. By looking at your face, I can tell you exactly what's wrong with you, right? Now, what if I was sitting in this room tonight and said, I have this power, and I convinced you, I showed you all the newspaper articles and all the people I've diagnosed, and so you're all 100% convinced. And I said, 3 of you in this room have cancer, and 1 of you is really serious. Do you want me to tell you? You might say, no, I don't. I don't want to know. Which is kind of foolish, because if you have it, you should know, right? But we're a bit like that, I'll just change it around. I'll say, I have mystic power, and 3 of you in this room have a serious spiritual problem that, if it's not remedied, is going to really disturb your life. Would you like me to tell you who it is and what the problem is? You probably wouldn't be overly anxious in the beginning. Oh, is it me? Is it me? Tell me. I want to know. Right? But to advance spiritually, we have to be in that. We have to have that degree of humility where we can say, yes, please tell me. And then we have to understand why we would think that way. Because God's here and I'm here, and there's a lot of stuff in the way. And all I'm saying is I can point out what's in the way. And therefore, if your ego is under control, you'll say, point it out, because I want to get it out of the way, because I want this relationship. I don't want anything to get in the way of the relationship. And if your ego is too big, it's just, what do you know? How do you know? Isn't it? I don't want to hear it. Does that make sense? So if you want, like, let's say we have a relationship and there's something wrong, but we used to have a really close relationship, and we both want to reestablish the relationship the way it used to be. So we'd probably be willing to get a mediator and talk about what the problem is, because there's something between us that needs to be resolved. So if we really want that relationship to be reestablished the way it was, we'll probably be willing to find out what it is that is getting in the way and resolve it. Similarly, we have many things that are getting in the way between ourselves and God. And so, wouldn't it be good to know what it is so we could get closer? Of course, the answer is yes. But the problem is, when someone tells us, we don't like it. So, there's a statement in the Bible. It says, when somebody advises you or criticizes you, take it as a valuable jewel, because they're actually showing you how to get closer to God by showing you what the problem is. That's the way we should take it. And the Prabhupada's spiritual master said, if someone criticizes you, you should think, God has sent this person to make you humble. Because if you accept it, the only way you can accept it is by being humble, right? So he's made you humble. That's the positive way. And the ego way is to totally reject it, isn't it? What do you know? Who are you? I didn't ask you. If I want some advice, I'll ask you. I don't appreciate it. But the problem didn't go away by telling him that. The problem's still there. So that's why humility is so valuable in spiritual life. Now, we were talking the other day, Arjuna, he was telling Krishna everything he knew to be true. And Krishna said, none of what you've told me is true, it's all wrong. And how I know it's all wrong? Look at you, you're a total mess. And if you actually had knowledge, you wouldn't be having a nervous breakdown right now. You would have figured it out. So Arjuna, he hit the wall, he had a breakdown, he couldn't go any further. And so he said, okay, Krishna, I give up. Tell me what to do. Right? That's the definition of humility. You come to a point in your life where you realize, I've gone as far as I can go on my own. I need a teacher, I need a guru, I need someone to guide me. So that's what Arjuna did. He became humble. He was talking like he knew everything. Krishna, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And he couldn't resolve his own problems, and he drove himself crazy. And Krishna said, you're such a fool. You think you know, and look at you, you're a total mess. You can't even function now. He couldn't function. You can't even function, and you're telling me you know so many things, but you don't know anything. And Arjuna agreed, actually I don't. Otherwise I wouldn't be in this mess. So he said, okay, Krishna, whatever you say, I accept it. That's humility. That's how you approach spiritual life. Now, is that easy? To accept somebody who's going to guide you, is that easy? No, but that's what a guru does. So is it easy to be a disciple? Not always. Sometimes the guru will tell you something, and it may not make sense. And you do it anyway, because you agree to take that guidance. That's the humility. Look at, Prabhupada was asked to go to America. It didn't make sense. Everyone in the world thought, there's not one person in America that's going to take this up. Everybody thought that. Everybody. Every one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, everyone in the organization that he was in, everyone else in India, everybody thought, you're going to go there and die. And no American is going to take this up. They're too materialistic. Why did Prabhupada go? Because his guru told him. He didn't think, this makes absolutely no sense to go to the West. Nobody's going to take it. He thought, my guru told me, so I do it. That's humility. That sometimes even it doesn't make sense materially, but because the guru said it, you do it. And it's a good thing Prabhupada had faith, isn't it? Otherwise we wouldn't be here. So you can see how important humility is in spiritual life. Because spiritual life means you come to a point where you realize, okay, I don't know enough to make myself happy. I don't know enough to purify myself to the level I need to be purified. I don't know enough to make sense of everything. I need a guru. That requires humility. You agree? Yeah. So it's an essential aspect of spiritual life, and it's considered the first quality in spiritual life. If you can say, I don't know everything, and approach someone who knows more than you, you're doing well. But that degree of humility gets you on the path. And guru simply means he's a little bit ahead of you. Maybe he's only 1 foot ahead of you, maybe he's 100 miles ahead of you, but he's ahead of you. And therefore he can say, go this way. So, I spoke for an hour. I think we should have a discussion. You can ask questions. I just want to reiterate this last point. When I was saying that we don't like to be criticized, we don't like to be told what's wrong with us, an aspect of humility is to be self-aware. So we're reflective. We're looking at our own shortcomings so we can improve them. And you probably realize if you don't focus on your own shortcomings, you're going to focus on other people's shortcomings. Right? Isn't that how it works? And you know why you notice other people's shortcomings more than your own? Does anybody know why? Because it's a lot easier to see other people's faults. Because you're looking at them. And our eyes go this way. They don't go inside, they go outside. So it's so easy to see others' faults, isn't it?
But often it's like your mirror image, you know?
Yeah, true. Very good point. Psychologists have pointed out that if you see a fault in another person, especially if it bothers you, it's probably because you're seeing your fault in them. And that's why it upsets you. Have you ever seen a fault in another person and it doesn't bother you? And you've seen a fault in another person and it really bothers you? It's probably because it didn't bother you in one person because it's not something you have, but the other fault bothered you because it's something that you have. And it reminds you of yourself. For example, let's say you're on a diet. You're overweight. And you have a friend who's also overweight. So you go out to eat, and that friend eats a lot. And your dietitian told you to eat 1,000 calories, and he's like eating like 1,000 calories a second. It upsets you. You get mad, you get angry, because you're seeing yourself in him. Isn't it? Yeah. So, sometimes if you want to be really bold and you're finding fault with someone, instead of saying you this and you that, you can just change it to I and see if it fits. You always leave a mess. Just change it to I always leave a mess. See if it fits. Some people say if you spot it, you got it. You see it because you have it. Again, it's really important to understand that fault finding generally, unless it's benevolent and it's really intended to help someone, it's generally a symptom of a spiritual problem, a spiritual weakness. And appreciation is generally a symptom of being properly situated spiritually, that your heart is generous enough to appreciate. Or your heart is hard enough that you will condemn and criticize. And the worst kind of criticism is to criticize when the fault is not there. It's you make it up. That isn't really called criticism, that's called being vicious, basically. And in our language we call that offense or aparad in Sanskrit, where you're vilifying a person and they didn't even do anything. So, it's one thing. You have a fault and at least you have a fault, I didn't make it up. But even if you have a fault and I focus on it, it has a negative effect on me. Because if you focus on other people's faults, it brings you down. And often, karmically, when you focus on others' faults, those faults come back and start infecting you. So, even if you have the fault, it's bad for me to focus on it. And it's better if I focus on your good qualities, because that will uplift me. So you have to understand it also, that even if you have a fault, it may be detrimental to my own good to be focused on it, because because it's negative, it will tend to bring me down. So for my own benefit, if I focus on your good qualities, it'll help me. And I focus on your bad qualities, it'll hurt me. So even as a practice, to practice trying to see good qualities and not focus on the bad, that's a spiritual practice you can use to elevate you. It's very interesting. Prabhupada's spiritual master said, even if we acknowledge objectively a person has a fault, it doesn't give you a right to fault find, because it degrades you. Because you could focus on something else. It's a negative thing, isn't it? To focus on another's fault, it's negative. If you're managing and you have to decide who should do what, and a person doesn't do something well, obviously you might say, well, they're not good at this. It's not fault finding, it's just practical. But when you're focused on the bad qualities of another person, it really will harms us. It degrades us, even if they do have the bad quality. That's the trick, because we think, well, if they have the bad quality and they point it out, what's the problem? And Prabhupada's spiritual master said, it is a problem, because you could focus on the good quality, and you're focusing on the bad quality, so you're going down. And he never liked anyone to focus on others' bad qualities. And when people would come to him to complain, he wouldn't let them complain. He would just say, they'd say, okay, we have a problem with so-and-so. And he would say, okay, well, tell me something good about so-and-so. And they'd say something good. And he said, okay, now can I tell my problem? He said, no, meeting's finished. He didn't want to hear it. He wouldn't let them say anything bad. He'd only let them say something good. Isn't that interesting? And then sometimes when they said something bad about someone, he would turn around and take the bad thing and say, no, it's actually a good quality. He would actually glorify, because he wanted to teach them to see good. So this person, he's not chanting. And Bhaktisiddhanta would say, and he would say, what is he doing? He said, well, he's doing service all day. Does he have devotion? Yes. Is he serving nicely? Yes. And Bhaktisiddhanta just says, just see. He's not chanting and he's serving. He must have so much devotion, he doesn't need to chant. He just turns it around. Nobody's living in the ashram, that's the rule, he's supposed to chant. No, look how much bhakti he has. He doesn't even chant, and he serves all day. He has so much devotion. So he turned it around. Isn't that interesting? Spun it around, because he's trying to show that that's how we should see. Even because he's on that level where he can see that way. And he's teaching us, get to that level where you see that way. Amazing, huh?
Confusing.
Confusing? When they're on that level, that's just how you'll see. He's an acharya, so he's teaching, he's doing that as an example to prevent them from doing it. So he's taking a fault, and he's seeing the good side of the fault. Some of the people, they had left the temple, they had gone out, gotten married, and so forth, and they weren't doing so much of their spiritual practice. So that some of the people were complaining, and he said, they have so much devotion, they have reserves. They have reserves of devotion, so they don't have to do their practice so strictly anymore. He would just turn it around. So basically, he's saying, just see it like that. Try to see it positively. Yes?
It's no more that you have to look at what you do, not than another person doing. I mean, worrying about you.
Yeah, that's...
Another one, not
yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Person do it, if it's not chanting or
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You have to do what you have to do.
Exactly. But
Something like that.
yeah, exactly like that. But our nature is, we're more focused on the faults of others than our own. That's the problem. Because we see, it's easier to, like, if you're doing something wrong, it's much easier for me to see it than if I'm doing it wrong.
I'm not saying not do that, but I'm trying not.
Yeah, we should try. Yeah, that's perfect. We don't need to worry about others' faults. We need to worry about our own.
Yeah, because actually it's not helping at all.
No. Plus, my spiritual master said, if you set a good example, it'll inspire the others. So let's say I have a fault, and you decide, well, I'm not going to tell him anything. I'll just work on myself. And by you working on yourself, then maybe you're doing something better than I do. And then I realize, I'm not doing it as well as you. Just because I see how well you're doing it, then I notice. But I didn't notice before. So sometimes your example is by far the best thing you could do to change anybody. And I've had this experience, being around people who are very devoted, and immediately I would think, wow, they're so much more devoted than I am. And it would inspire me to do more. And they didn't have to say anything. It's just that example. So that's the best way. If we're focused on others' problems, probably we're trying to avoid some of our responsibility for our own progress. Because otherwise, why would others be more important than our own? And then it gets worse. This is where it hits a really bad point. When others are not doing well, you don't do well, and you blame your failure on them. I can't do well. I can't do well because you're not doing well. Why aren't you doing well, Mahatma? Well, because she's not doing well. So she's a bad influence on me, so I can't do well. So I blame you for my problems. That's kind of the next level of where fault finding takes you. It kind of handicaps you.
Most the hardest thing there learned is you are responsible for everything.
Yeah, that's hard.
You can't
Yeah,
blame anyone.
yeah.
You are responsible.
You can, but it won't help you.
I know, this is demanding. This is more harder.
Yeah.
than
Well, even if it's hard to accept, from a practical point of view, it's the best way to live, because you can, let's say it actually is your fault, but I can't do anything to change you. So all I can do is do what I have to do to improve the situation, in spite of whatever you're doing. So even if I don't accept it, still I have to come to the same conclusion, that I'm the only one that can, Okay, Donald Trump's the president. That's going to affect the world in different ways. But whatever happens, still, I can't blame him if, I end up living on the street. That's ultimately it's my fault. So fault finding contains that mentality. At least it can lead to that mentality.
Why is it ultimately your fault? I don't understand.
Well, let's give an example of a problem you have. Well, okay, let me state a general principle. Everything's cause and effect. So if you have some problem, then just go backwards and look at cause and effect. There'll be a whole chain of cause and effect, things that you did that brought you to the present situation. And if you would have changed any one of the causes, the outcome would have been different. Like maybe there's 10 causes that you ended, 10 causes with effects that brought you to Dublin. And if any one of those 10 things you didn't do, you wouldn't be here, or you wouldn't be here now. And so you made decisions to do every one of those things, and every one of those things had effects. And you could have decided to change any one of those things. I don't know if I was telling you this story. I was telling the devotees on the island. There was a lady whose husband, after they sold their house, he, unknown to her, took all the money out of the bank and left her. So he left her. There's no home and no money. So obviously, in that situation, how is she going to think it's my fault? It just doesn't make sense. And she went to a counselor and he said, tell me how it's your fault, which completely threw her off. And he said, no, I want you to think. And she thought about it. And when she thought hard enough, she realized, yeah, it's my fault. I should have never married that man. I should have never trusted him. And I married him and I trusted him, and that was my mistake.
But how is that your fault if you trust? I don't just
because there were no. I'll explain why. Because there were signs that he wasn't trustworthy, and she noticed them, but she overlooked them. So she took responsibility for overlooking those signs and marrying him. And deep down inside, she had a fear that something like this could happen, and it did happen.
But what if
and nobody told her to marry him. She made that choice.
It wasn't arranged marriage. Okay, but what if something is really not your fault? If somebody's
runs into your car?
What?
Somebody crashes into your car?
Yeah.
It's not your fault. Okay.
Or if you're a child and something happens to you. If I don't know. Because if you're a trustworthy person and you trust somebody and then you marry this person, okay, it is your fault, but it's not your fault. It is it is.
Believe me.
It's the consequence
okay, I can tell you something about marriage, and believe me, women make a lot of bad choices in choosing men. And
yes, but why?
I can tell you why.
Yeah,
because they don't ask me first. That's why.
I just don't think it's so simple. I don't think, okay, it's his fault. Because I just wanted to ask already this question.
Well, when women get the divorce, they realize it was their fault that they married that guy. They all think like that when they get divorced. Why did I marry him? He was such a bum. I should have seen it. Okay, let's take the marriage example, right? You marry a guy, it doesn't work out. And you realize that I was only 21. What did I know about marriage? This and that. I never had a boyfriend. People said he was a good guy. Okay, that's all good and fine. But you decided to marry him. You could have asked other people. You could have gone to a library, read books about men and marriage and all this. And maybe by doing that, you'd realize he was the wrong guy.
That's crazy. You're going to have a research.
No, it's not crazy. Not crazy. Your whole life is dependent on that decision. And you made that decision. So you have to take responsibility for it. Because you didn't have to.
Spend so much time thinking about every decision. Make such.
Well, that one you should. I don't know about everyone, but that, in my experience, that one you should. You should really spend a lot of time, because ultimately you're making it. And so, no. But here's the point: If you don't take responsibility, that means you can't change it. So by taking responsibility for everything, then you say, okay, I'm responsible, so now it's not working, so I can be responsible to make it work, or do something.
Yeah, I understand maybe when you get to this point that you can understand that you made a mistake. But I don't see how this mistake can be like, okay, this is my fault. I can see if you think this is my fault.
Whose fault is it?
It's kind of like like more like low self-esteem than humility, you know.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
you can admit you made a mistake, all right? I didn't make a good choice.
Yeah, okay.
That can happen, you know,
Yes,
in
yeah.
life. You make mistakes.
Definitely.
But to say it is my fault or it is her fault, or I don't see
Okay.
it's like productive. For a person
No,
to
no,
know,
no,
you know, to
no,
have the-
no. That's, if you have low self-esteem, it's not productive. If you have good self-esteem, it's completely productive. And so, I would answer your question and say, first come to the level of having self-esteem, then you'll be able to take responsibility in a productive way. Because it's true, if you have low self-esteem and you try to take responsibility, it'll make you feel worse. It'll make you feel like, I'm stupid. And I already think I'm stupid, and now I think I'm double stupid. So, that's my experience. That actually, when people have low self-esteem, it usually backfires when I say you should take responsibility, because it makes them feel bad. But when you have normal self-esteem, then it's very productive, because you'll be totally in control if you take responsibility. Otherwise, every good Hare Krishna will just say, it's my karma, I can't do anything, which is a real misunderstanding. You can do something. You can always do something. You always have something. Even you can change the way you think about it, right? So maybe it didn't work out in the relationship. At least you can take responsibility for how you feel, right? And how you treat that person, like that. Think about it for a while. Then we'll get back to you later. Yes?
You know, throughout, you meet all type of difficulties, right?
Yeah.
Can be bossy, not humble. Sometimes
Yeah.
the way they speak to you,
Yeah.
hurt you as well.
Yeah.
So how would you act on it?
Oh, okay.
Also, sorry, how would you act on it? And then, would you still be humble following their instruction, or just stop them and point them their mistake?
Uh-huh. She's asking that, let's say you're interacting with a devotee and they're bossy, they're not humble, or even worse than that, they may be harmful. Should you be humble with them, or what should you do? How should you be bossy if they're bossy? Should you stand up to them and so on? As a general answer, I would say if they're bossy and you try to be bossy with them, they'll be more bossy. So I'll tell you my personal policy. Have you ever heard the saying, choose your battles wisely? So it's like, should I fight this? In other words, the question is, is there any value in fighting this? You know, maybe if you feel the relationship is harmful for you, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, you want to distance yourself. That might be the best choice. So in that sense, humble just means you don't fight it. You just say, I'm sorry, it's difficult for me to work in this situation. So there's no conflict. It's just you realize the person has a different nature than yours and it's not working. If you have a good relationship with the person, then you can communicate and say, I don't appreciate when, it doesn't inspire me when you're bossy, but if you were, if you could give me a vision and facilitate my service, that would inspire me. So you could just explain, this would be, is that okay? Could you do that? I respond better that way. But you would have to see if that person would be open to that, because if they're not, then by saying that, they'll get more upset. So every situation is going to be different. And it is true, in some cases you just have to be humble because you realize you can't do anything else. And then you have to decide how humble you want to be. And what you're able to deal with and what you're not able to deal with. I mean, obviously, if that boss happens to be your husband, you can't just distance. You have to work it out. So that's a different situation. Or that boss is, you're working in a company and you want to stay in that company and you like the company and it's important for you or your life depends on it. You're going to have to be humble. But that kind of humble is not really humble. It's just you'll be humble because it's practical. So I'll say, okay, I'll do what he says because it's practical because I need this job. So every situation's different. But we should never become proud. We should always be humble. But it's just a question of how we allow people to deal with us. So we don't want to be humble in a way that they just walk all over us and ruin us. But I can be pretty forceful with that person, say, I don't appreciate what you're doing, I feel this is offensive or abusive or whatever. But I can remain humble at the same time. Humble knowing that I'm a humble servant of God, in spite of the fact that I'm forceful with this person. Because sometimes being forceful is also part of my dharma, part of my service. I have to protect myself. If someone's coming to attack you, you say, okay, here, just shoot. You say, well, if I don't have this body, how can I serve Krishna? So I have to protect my body. If you're in an abusive relationship, it's going to be damaging for you, so you have to stand up. But that's not about pride. Pride is different than standing up for yourself. And I think that's where we get mixed up with humility. Because humility is more of a consciousness. And the external actions could come out in ways that look like pride, and they're not. Like for example, sometimes someone would be very, very offensive or critical of God, and Prabhupada would become very forceful, very upset, but it was out of humility, out of his love, not because he was angry at that person. Just like if somebody criticizes your mother, you will be upset out of love for your mother, not because you hate the person, because you love your mother, and you might get very upset with that person. So we look at you upset and we think, what's wrong with her? But from your perspective, it was totally generated by love. So things can be generated by humility that don't look so humble all the time. But it's more your attitude. So that's important, to keep that humble attitude. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's hard to say in each situation, but I think a lot of us get into conflicts unnecessarily and when they're not productive. So choose your battles wisely. Don't fight this battle if you're going to lose. And don't fight this battle if it's not that important. Like if you can kind of tolerate it, then why fight it? Because by fighting it, you might make it worse. Or you might compromise your own integrity when you fight it. So that's important. You want to maintain your integrity. And a lot of us have a tendency to put a lot of energy into negative things that just disturb us and just waste our mental energy. And, we put our minds into it and then the whole day we're disturbed. We should have just left it. This person's doing this. Okay, whatever. I can't do anything about it, so I'm not going to think about it. But if I think about it, I just get disturbed. Because what they're doing is not right. It's hurting other people. And I went to the boss, he didn't do anything about it, no one's going to do anything about it. So if I think about it, then it just upsets me. So sometimes we have to detach from things we can't change. And that's a hard lesson, and a lot of us don't do that. We want to fight it, push it, fight it, argue it, and we waste a lot of energy. So it's okay, you want to fight it, make sure you're going to win. Or something good's going to come out of it. Otherwise, why fight the battle if there's no good outcome that you can produce? Is that okay? So, who has? Yes. All right. So we have more questions. Yes. Yes.
Have you ever had the experience when your spiritual master asked you to do something and you felt like, oops, I can't do this, or I don't know how to achieve that, or even maybe I don't want to do this?
Yes. What do you do then?
Yeah.
You go into medicine cabinet, find a bottle of painkillers and eat as many as you can till you die. Because by disobeying your guru, you will die anyway. No, I'm only kidding.
You won't die from painkillers.
All right, what do you die from? Sleeping pills? Sleeping pills?
Maybe.
I thought it was painkillers. No. You can if you take enough. Large, yeah, okay. 2 bottles of painkillers. It depends on the instruction. It depends on the spiritual master. It depends on many things. In the perfect world, you tell your spiritual master, I can't follow that instruction, but I can do this. Is that okay? You know the story when the devotee wanted to get a divorce and remarry, and Prabhupada let him do it. You know that story? So Prabhupada let him do it, and so Prabhupada was asked, why did you let him do that? Because normally you tell them to stay together, and if they do separate, you tell them not to remarry. And Prabhupada said, I know this devotee was asking, can I do it? And I know if I say no, he's going to do it anyway. So I said yes, so he wouldn't be disobeying my instruction. So a spiritual master doesn't want you to disobey his instructions. So if you say, I find this difficult to do, then he might say, okay, then do this. Just today I was counseling a devotee, and he has a problem. He's very introverted, and he's been asked to go out and distribute Prabhupada's books. And he doesn't like approaching people. It makes him feel awkward. And he's tried it, and it just doesn't work. So he found another way to do it. Not on the street, but in another way, by putting books in stores. So, we don't want him to, have a nervous breakdown, going out approaching people when it's not his nature. So, spiritual master is not a dictator. Unless the spiritual master feels that what he told you to do is really important for you, then he might insist. No, you really need to do this. I did that with one of my disciples. He didn't want to go out on Sankirtan, chanting, and he didn't want to distribute books, and he wanted to get initiated. So I said, well, let's test him. I said, go out. I want you to go out and do it, just to see if he would do what I said. And after hemming and hawing, he finally did it, and he broke his ankle that day somehow. So I don't know if that was a divine occurrence or what. But anyway, he did it, so it was good. And after that, I didn't insist because he's doing other service. So sometimes it may be that way. And there are instructions that sometimes we can't follow, but the spiritual master gives many instructions. So it's really between you and him, and I don't think most spiritual masters are dictators who would demand only one thing. I mean, if it's a fundamental principle, of course, but if it's not fundamental service, then you should discuss it rather than go crazy. The interesting thing is, if you don't resolve it, you'll go crazy not doing it, and you'll go crazy doing it. Right? You go crazy not doing it because you're thinking he wants you to do it, and you go crazy doing it because it's not your nature to do it. So you have to resolve it because he doesn't want you to go crazy. I can guarantee you that. That was not his idea, that I'll get a disciple and drive her crazy by giving her instructions she can't follow. At least I hope that wasn't his purpose. Is that okay? Yeah.
In a way, that is kind of an art to itself. In order for somebody who's or a spiritual master, let's talk about spiritual master. In a way, they need to see what people are capable of doing and not capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to have a kind of vision where people fit.
Definitely.
And if they fit in certain roles.
But they may see something you can do that you don't see yourself. And then they may push you to do that.
Or conversely, they may tell you you can do what I'm doing, and most people can't.
Yeah. But generally, both will be there. But one aspect of the spiritual master is to push a little bit. to help the disciples see, or at least have faith, that they can do things not because they're qualified, but because Krishna will help them. So that's also a part of the equation.
But Krishna works like specifically in unique ways to everybody, so it's like you need to give specific instructions to specific people.
Specific also, yeah. But then, okay, let's say you have a specific instruction. But within that, the spiritual master may say, okay, within this specific instruction, try for this, which may be something you think you can't do. And then he'll try to help you develop faith that Krishna, if you have that faith, Krishna can empower you with intelligence, with resources. At least that's what Prabhupada did with us. And it was almost intoxicating to have those realizations, that to see Krishna come and help us. Or sometimes it was fun. Because Prabhupada said we could do this, we didn't think we could do it. We said, well, let's try. He said we could. It was almost like we're trying to do something that we know we can't, but it was fun to try. And then a lot of times we would see Krishna did it. So that at least has to be considered. That sometimes the spiritual master will see something in you don't see in yourself.
Can spiritual masters nowadays give the same sort of things that Prabhupada gave to you guys?
Same sort of things mean see the capabilities.
Yeah, and then kind of have Krishna.
I can't speak for all of them, but I would say as a general principle, yes, although it could be misused or misinterpreted. But at least we could say it's their desire to help their disciples become better. But as I said, a lot of it is not the innate ability of the disciple, it's the power of the spiritual energy. And by helping the disciple increase their faith, then that empowerment becomes possible. Like we were speaking earlier, when you're in a humble position, you're able to receive that power. That's who it comes to. So if the spiritual master can help you get into that, hey Govinda, I can't do this on my own, please help. And your willingness to go out and try something in that mood, then you'll be able to do things you didn't think you could do. We all have that experience. And we'll just give you an example. This is kind of funny. So in the early days of the movement, we had this joke. This is how we were trained to learn how to cook. And say, okay, it's your turn to cook. I don't know how to cook. Just go in the kitchen, bow down, pray to Krishna, teach me how to cook, and start cooking. So, a little exaggeration, but not entirely. So, the early days of the movement were functioning a little bit on that level, where we were a little bit outside our comfort zone, just due to necessity of the mission. But Prabhupada liked that. Sometimes we failed and sometimes we succeeded. So that's there also. If the spiritual master can see how to engage a disciple, that's good. Or the disciple can tell him, this is how I'd like to be engaged, is this okay? It can work both ways. And a spiritual master may have a particular mission, so he may want you to do something specifically, at least for a while. And as a good disciple, you'll do it. And you'll say, well, I would like to do this, and say, okay, just work on this for the next 6 months. We need to establish this. And then you can do that. And you'll say, okay, that would be good. So it's, give and take. It's love. It's all about love, guru and disciple. That's what it is, ultimately. Is that okay? That's more than okay. That's double okay. Anything else? Are you too humble to ask? Yes.
How could the taste be developed for Krishna consciousness apart? Because most of the things you do put your mind mind is wandering at many places. So you're doing many things as a formality or as a requirement. Okay, being a devotee, you have to do a chanting for 60 rounds. You have to do this principles. So how could be the taste developed, real taste? So you enjoy like, okay, I'm doing for myself, like please Krishna.
Well, how does the taste from the point of beginning, where there's no taste and the mind tends to be distracted, to the point of taste? There are about 4 or 5 stages in between that you naturally go through. So if you begin the process chanting, following principles, and you do it well, you'll naturally graduate to the next stage, next stage, next stage. And then eventually you'll come to the stage of taste, where you'll have constant taste all the time. It's just a gradual development. It's not like you can exactly just like do something tomorrow, but you can. Whatever you're doing, you can do it better. But to have a very deep taste for spiritual life takes time. But it will come. And in between the time it does come, you'll have a lot of fantastic experiences. Very high experiences. But they won't remain. They'll go up and down. And when you come to the level of taste, it'll remain all the time. So you just have to stick it out long enough. It's like I'm teaching you piano and I'm really good at it. And you say, when am I going to be that good? And I go, well, here are the lesson books. By the time you get to the 4th book, you'll be that good. And that'll be about 6 years from now. You wanted to say something?
I'm just going to make a little comment.
Okay.
Sometimes when you're on the beginning stages, you're granted like an experience, almost like a glimpse.
Yeah,
of what
special mercy.
That special mercy of what it would feel like to constantly be
Yes.
on that platform where you eternally have that taste. And for me, that's always helpful when I'm feeling down or when I'm feeling low and I don't feel like I have that taste.
Yes.
But I remember that instance or that experience when I had that.
That's a good point.
That high, that transcendental taste, and it inspires me. It's like I want to feel that again, so I'm going to work even though right now I may not be inspired.
Yeah.
I have that memory of what that feeling is.
Yes. I mean, the taste does come. So like Shyam is saying, you have to remember that. You'll have a good time playing piano, even with lesson book number 1. But when you watch me play, you're thinking, I want to play like that. And I'm playing with my eyes closed. I'm actually playing while I'm talking to you, because it's spontaneous for me. But I tell you, go through all the lesson books. You'll get there. Just be patient. And you'll have good times also, even playing simple songs. You'll get some taste. You'll feel like I feel. Patience. Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, this comment.
Yes.
I think it's hard to think and to appreciate every single step you get.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Always
Yeah.
what's looking up instead in that moment.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is another thing you.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because you need to do both. Appreciate
Oh yes.
what you have and look forward to where you're going. Yeah, so that's true. Like whatever Krishna consciousness you have, you appreciate. It may not be full taste, but it's something. And that's good. That's definitely true, yeah. Otherwise, you'll always be lamenting, I'm not up here, I'm only here. But here is good also. What? Yeah, yeah. It's good down here, too. When we were young devotees, we had a great time. We weren't up here, we were down here, but we were happy down here because we were still getting something. And what we were getting was so fantastic. Even though it wasn't up here, it was still great. And if you're not getting it, it means maybe you're doing it wrong. Or maybe, like you say, like she's saying, you're not satisfied. and you're looking for here, and you can't appreciate what you have here. That can be there. Yes? That's just materialistic consciousness. We always want something we don't have, right? Because somebody else has it, and I don't, so I don't appreciate what I have, I appreciate what they have. And if I appreciate what they have, then I can't appreciate what I have, even though I have more than most people. Have you ever heard the statement, there is someone in the world right now who has so little that they're envious of what you have? That if they had what you had, that they would consider themselves like so fortunate. And then we're not satisfied with what we have, and we're looking to what someone else has, when there's hundreds or maybe millions of people looking at what we have, and if they had it, they would think that was perfection. Isn't that interesting? Because there's so many poor people in the world, or people live in villages that don't have much. And we just live in a city, have a simple job, and we have more than they do. And we're looking at our miserable life thinking, I work at this job, and this and that. And if they had that, they would be in heaven. So it's nice to look at it that way. Yes? Yes?
What does doing it wrong mean? What does doing it wrong mean? How do you do it?
Doing it wrong means you're doing it mechanically. Because you're doing it ritualistically. Thinking that if my body does the spiritual practice right, I don't have to engage my mind and heart. Like, for example, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but we're chanting. So those of us who are initiated, or those of us who want, we chant 16 rounds a day. And so we think, if I chant 16 rounds on my beads, then everything's good. But that's not true. It's like, you could say, well, all I have to do is eat 3 meals a day and I'll be healthy. That's not true. It depends what you eat. Right? So it's kind of like, okay, what does it mean to do it wrong? It means bad diet. So you've eaten the 3 meals, that's good. But you're eating, all you eat is potatoes and cake. So that's not going to work. Unless you're trying to gain weight and sleep a lot, then it'll work. But otherwise, it's not going to work. So, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And in spiritual life, the wrong way is mechanically. It's just your body does it. But spiritual life is all about your heart, your motive. So you're chanting, and if your goal in chanting is just to finish your quota of chanting, then it can be very mechanical. There's many religions that are very ritualistic, and that people feel that if they do the ritual properly, then they're successful. Whoop. Isn't it true? It's just, and there's no heart in it, and that's not successful. They just did the ritual, but the heart was not there. There are priests, many priests, who do rituals as an employment. They're given certain deities to worship. In some places in India, they go to different places, and the different homes or hotels or restaurants, they have deities, and they come in and they do a puja, and they get paid for it. You think they're really into it, devotionally? No, it's a job. So, if you take religion and spiritual practice like that, then it's not going to produce the result, or not very quickly. It's like you and your wife. I could tell you how to be a good husband, and you could do it mechanically. You go, "Hi dear, how are you? Did you have a good day today? Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need anything? I'd be really happy to help you." And she's like, "Get out of here." Right? It's all artificial. It's not what she wants. "I brought you some roses. Where would you like me to put them? Aren't they beautiful?" You'll drive her crazy. So you you're doing everything perfectly. You read the book, this is what it said to do. Ask these questions, smile, be nice, don't raise your voice, get the flowers. And it's so artificial, it is better you didn't do them. Yes?
So would you not say, like, with the practice of chanting, and gradually you'll develop that, that taste and,
Maybe. Okay, generally the answer is yes. But practically the answer is not always yes. Because let's say you learn to do something on your own, but you learn to do it the wrong way. So you're doing it over and over and over and over, but you're doing it the wrong way. So what happens? Now you develop a habit of doing it the wrong way. So you're not getting the result. Or I like to joke and say, let's say I'm the temple, I'm in charge of the temple here, the center, and I say, we have 16 Mercedes vans. And you think, wow, 16 Mercedes vans, that's impressive. And then for some reason you say, how do they run? And I say, none of them work. So, I chant 16 rounds, how are they? They're all bad. None of them work. I chant 2 hours a day. So it's not just that you're chanting that guarantees it. It has to be, there are offenses to avoid. There's a proper way to do it. So that's a mistake we make. So your answer is partially true in the sense that the hope is that if you chant, even if you don't chant well, if you keep chanting, you will chant well. You'll improve. But just because you're chanting year after year, it's not guaranteed you'll improve. You could get worse. So, and if you're not chanting properly, you won't get the full result. You'll get some result, but not the result that you want to get or you should get. So that's why it is said that you have to chant avoiding 10 offenses. Then you get the result. Like, when you get antibiotics, you can't, most antibiotics, as far as I know, you can't take with milk products, or not close. You can't take milk and then take it. Maybe you have to wait some time. So the antibiotic works, but you just counteracted it by taking milk, so it doesn't work. So chanting works, but you took some milk. So you counteract, by your behavior, your mentality, you're doing it wrong. Like, let's say I'm chanting. Listen, tomorrow we're all going to chant. So I'm chanting here and I'm sitting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And I'm thinking, I bet everyone's looking at me and thinking, I really chant good. I'm like the best chanter, this side of the, Russia. And I'm just like, nobody's as good as me. So then, what benefit is that? I'm not praying to Krishna. I'm just inflating my ego. So the chanting is really inflating my ego. It's not purifying me. Or I'm leading kirtan and I'm going, hope all the women are looking at me because I'm such a good singer. Whoa. Right? So I'm not thinking of Krishna. I'm thinking of attracting women by my chanting Hare Krishna. And believe me, there are people who do that. There are. And so their chanting is not helping them. I mean, it might help them get girlfriends, but it's not helping them get love of God. There is a story in India. They have professional groups that chant, and they make money. That's their occupation. So let's say people have a wedding, and then they'll invite this professional group. So they're professional musicians. And so I'm going to show everybody who's watching the deities. They can't see them. So, it's very stylized, and it's just very external. Hare Krishna, oh Krishna. It's like, give me a break, This is like, what are you doing? And so, in our temple in India, they brought many of these groups together, and there was this competition. Like we have, I don't know if you have it here, but when I was young, we used to have this thing called the Battle of the Bands. So they'd have all these unknown bands would come and perform. Do you still have that kind of thing? Yeah. All these, young 16-year-olds in their bands, they'd come and they'd play. So this was kind of like the battle of the kirtan bands, and then the number one kirtan, the group that was judged, got the highest score, would get a prize or some money or something, I don't know. So Prabhupada was in his room, but he could hear the kirtan. Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, they're not chanting Hare Krishna. And we're thinking, well, what are they chanting? I hear Hare Krishna. He said, no, they're not chanting Hare Krishna. They're chanting money, money, money. Right? You understand? So what's going on in your heart is what you're chanting. What it sounds like you're chanting, it sounds like Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, you're not chanting Hare Krishna. You're chanting money, money. Or maybe you're chanting, hey ladies, look at me, I'm cute. And I have a good voice. And I check out my tattoo, the Om tattoo. I'm cool. So we have to be aware of that. Right? Or even we're all just chanting together silently, and I think, I wonder if anybody's looking at how nicely I'm chanting. That's not chanting, right? So, in theory, if you're chanting sincerely and you're not doing it so well, it will get better, like you said, and it will come to a perfectional stage. But if you're not, then there's no guarantee it will. 'Cause, you start going in the wrong direction, and you just go faster, you'll just get lost faster. So it's like that. Is that all right? Yeah. I hate to be so blank and blunt and honest, but actually I don't hate it. I love it. Because I think it's important to just tell it like it is. Because it's true. And so we shouldn't hide the truth. Yes. Does somebody have? Yes.
So due to offensive chanting, the taste may decrease.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody's bhakti as well.
Yes.
But then in Bhagavatam there's one verse spoken by Yamraj that it doesn't matter however you speak the holy name, it's still purifying and beneficial.
That's for people who aren't devotees.
Ah.
That's when they're, like, if somebody, like where I come from, I was living in California, and there are a lot of like young people who are really nasty. So, they'd see us. Our temple was at the beach. It was kind of a degraded beach. As they drive by our temple, and they go, Hare Krishna, get a haircut. That was every 3 minutes. Hare Krishna, get a haircut. All these 16-year-olds, right? So it's referring to their chanting. But once you take it seriously and you want to advance to a higher level, then you have to avoid the 10 offenses. And they're avoiding the 10 offenses because they don't know what they are. So it's considered namabhas, or, it's a neutral kind of chanting. But it's funny because once you know what the offenses are, then now you can commit the offenses, and you're held accountable once you know. So when you take chanting seriously, then you can't commit offense and make advancement. But what's also being referred to is that you're becoming free from sinful reaction. But for us, we want to develop Krishna consciousness, so we have to go beyond. Like, where'd you stay last night? At the Ramada Inn. So I said Ramada. But part of it was Rama, and so Rama is the name of Krishna, so I get some benefit. But if you're serious, you have to do a little better than that. So yeah, that's my understanding. Anything else? Anything less? Should I take away something I said? Okay, tomorrow's the big day. Tomorrow we're going to help you reform your japa, your chanting. So if you're at all able to come, please do. It'll be one of the best days of your life, I promise. At least it'll be one of the best days of your life for your japa. It'll make a big difference. So please come. We're going to start at 10, I believe. Is that correct? And we'll end at 6. And you'll have an amazing time. Okay? And we brought the CDs today. Yes? And they're out on the table. And we have course on humility called the Heart of Vaishnava. We have a course on forgiveness. And then what did we do the first day? What was the topic? Beliefs. And there's a course called Recreation, the Recreation Workshop. We have that. That's about beliefs. So these are full courses live, 10 up to 50 hours. And then we have others. We have one on the mind, one on marriage. What else? Vows.
The mind.
Balance. We have balance. How to balance your life. Yeah. And then we have music also. Japa, yeah, okay. So, is there any prasadam or whatever?
There is, yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow?
No. Oh, tomorrow there'll be lunch.
Yeah, there'll be lunch tomorrow, yeah.
We'll go to about 1:30, then we'll have lunch, and then we'll...
Yeah, Alex is just going to get some now.
Yeah, so now some prasadam. So should we chant for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Hare Krishna. So we'll do a little kirtan and Hare Krishna.